Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to actually start getting started on this inking thing. Did you guys, I put up a video on that, right? Okay, I know I just put it up this morning at like 3 o'clock in the morning or something. So I don't know how many people seen that. And I know it's 2.5 hours long. So just, and really what I'm concerned with right now is just the beginning part of it, which is the pencil work and the ink. Okay. Because what we're going to start talking about today is, um, what do you call it? Designing it. Okay. Starting to design this. And I'm going to kind of tell you what this project exactly is going to be. And I probably said this before, but I think inking is, I think it's getting to be, it just, they don't teach it that much anymore or anything. And I think it's really important, okay? Um, and especially in this traditional way. And I also think it's fun. But so I want to define that today, what we're going to do and how we're going to get started. And I probably said this already, but one of the main things you're going to find out when you're getting ready, when you're designing something for ink or for final paint or whatever, is that it's got to be finished. Okay, it's got to be a very finished, balanced drawing, and it's got to be, kind of figured out and all that. Does that make sense? You can figure out once you get, and we're talking about inking with dip pens, brushes, um, all that kind of stuff. Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to talk a little bit about other tools that you can use to kind of help out with this. I think it's an important skill set, and I think it because I'm always the guy that's always yelling at you to draw looser, but there's something really good about, and I think we talked about this a little bit, about getting a brush pen and going and have a dedicated sketchbook for that, and just do that kind of work in it, where you're doing much more finished out work, much more controlled work, because then it's really fine tuning your motor skills and that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Which is going to help everything. Okay, any of those kind of things help everything.
Mike,
What?
and the inking is on Sketchbook, right? Or Photoshop, or both? Like,
It's inking with ink.
oh,
Okay, hang on. Hey Jesse,
Yes.
where you been?
I went downstairs to get some dinner. I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late.
Your
That's a tight.
your sketchbook is now your dinner. Yeah.
Cheers. Sounds
Everything
good.
has changed into being your sketchbook.
Everything. Anyway, okay,
If you're not sketching, you're doing it wrong.
that's right.
You know, breathing, stop that extra 0.5 seconds to scribble out something.
No, every time you exhale and breathe in, that's like another pen stroke. So you have to be breathing at the same time as doing pen strokes.
Okay. Let me. There's a couple things I want to mention in here from the last thing. This stupid mouse thing is so irritating. Okay. Let me go back here. Here. Okay. Where's it work at? Let me get the name here. Hang on. Yeah. These. Like, okay, not that one. Like this. Okay, what, what I made notes of myself on is hair. Okay, so this kind of thing where you're sort of putting a lot of individual stuff and it starts to become spaghetti hair. Does that make sense? Okay, so what you got to do here is you got to start, and I'll put a video up actually because I did a short video for another class for that. But a little better here. You've got to look at the masses of it, okay? And in our case, because we're talking about cartooning and things like that, you know, there's a lot of stylization that can happen here.
Mike, are you screen
Mike,
sharing?
Oh, I am right now. Hang on.
I knew it.
That's your fault.
My fault.
Actually, it's Taylor's fault.
All right, I'll accept it.
Take that.
I hope that's a sketchbook you're reading, Taylor.
100%.
Okay. You got to look for these masses and sort of mass this in right off the bat. You know, and then if you want to stylize a little bit, one of the ones I always talk about, like if we have face, this kind of thing. But the main thing when you're doing hair, you want to look at the big mass first, and you want to get that all put in, okay? And figure out where your masses are. Maybe there's a mass here. If there's a bun on someone's head, then it's probably going to go up. It is going to go up and radiate out from that point. And get your big masses in there. And then you can put like a stray hair here or here, or however you want to do that. But you've got to get the big masses in there. Otherwise, you start getting this like spaghetti hair thing, and that's not what hair looks like. It's masked for the most part. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in this case, you know, I mean, there's a million. You know, if you look at the old, like the Flintstones, they simplify the hair like that. Or what do you call that? Jetsons. You know, they just do this real simple massing of the hair, right? And then they just fill it with a color, right? So there's a billion ways to do that, but you need to look at the hair masses first, okay? Don't go to the individual. You can put individual hairs in there after you've masked in the hair. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, usually you do want to do a little of that, and it's really good to go look at, especially from life, because I'm always going to say that about sketching from life. Go look at people and just start working on it from life like that. You know. Let me do this one more time.
Mike.
Yeah.
My Wi-Fi was going nuts, so I just take off the Wi-Fi. I didn't log out. It was my Wi-Fi who's acting up this way, so I just turned off my Wi-Fi on my phone,
Right.
so I could just. I mean,
My Wi-Fi was freaking out last week. I have no idea why. Can you guys smell the fires down there?
I could
Oh,
yesterday, but not today.
Dude, the whole sky is orange. I was
It's-
like, it's beautiful but terrifying.
Up here, there's ashes all over everything, and it just smells like fire, like everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was ashing yesterday over here in Roland Heights. Like it was.
Where you at?
hot. In Roland Heights, the ash was
Oh,
coming
right.
down over here. Yeah.
People are like, it's snowing in California.
Yeah. The good thing about the heat, though, is I can go places and nobody's out. I love that.
Because I don't know if it's rumors that I heard the coronavirus doesn't like the awful heat or the fire. That's what I heard.
Yeah. I think it's basically the world's falling apart, basically. That's what it feels like. I think the next thing is we're going to start having volcanoes, like in
Hey
downtown.
man, Mount Rainier or Mount St. Helens is about to blow again.
Is it?
It's been like on the verge of eruption for the last like 10 years.
Yeah, and they're saying the Santa Ana faults, like, they're getting pretty bad too, so we're to expect more earthquakes. California's ready to go.
Not California, it's a whole country, man.
Yeah, it's like St. Helens is in Washington State.
We're all
Do you think the
doomed.
world ending?
I think
If
this-
the world ends, do we still have to do homework? That's the real question.
yeah,
We
if
end, we die.
if
That's
the
it.
world ends, I expect 4 times, 5 times.
We'll have such interesting landscapes to sketch.
Yeah, that's true.
Will we? I don't think we'll have any landscapes.
Well, you'll have to make humor of the most horrible situation ever.
Unless California falls off the map, and we don't make it out of the state in time.
Yeah, that could happen. Who knows? I think Trump's going to screw it up more than any natural disaster. Okay, hang on.
That's valid.
Isn't he himself a natural disaster?
Yeah, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Did you guys hear his speech about fires?
Oh,
Everyone was like, "There's so many words being said, but not a single
No,
sentence could be heard
please do your best impression.
from it."
I haven't
No,
heard
No,
it.
get out.
Please. I think you have a knack for it.
no.
Okay, Taylor. I don't know which Taylor it was.
I was like, which one?
You know, now we have 2. I think it's both. So this note, I wrote a note to myself. I said about graphic shape. Let me get rid of this. For some reason, I'm looking at the participants list. Hang on. Okay. I reorganized everything, so sorry if I'm a little funky right now. So that would be our last. What was our last meeting? The first?
Yeah.
This is a second. I don't know.
Yes, September 1st.
Okay. So let's go
Also, the
here. Damn it. This is what's so weird to me is I organize everything. Then when I go back, it's not the way I left it. Okay. Hang on.
You're so invested in your sketchbook, you only dream of organizing, and then you wake up to no organization.
Man, I spent all day from like morning till night organizing yesterday.
Oh.
But you
It's
have,
okay. Just blame Phil for everything.
it's like you have to get everything set up a certain way so it's just the same way every time. But it's like I have a work folder for every single class, and then I just went and I put all these onto a drive, and now I go in there and it's not there. Just totally weird.
Did you put them in like a Google Drive? Because
No.
Google Drive's been having problems.
No, it's this. Google Drive's been having a lot of problems actually. It's here, I think. Yeah. Here's Taylor's. I think it's the same comment for both. Yeah. Hang on. Try and give me these as like JPEGs or something like that, because no, this one's opening. That's fine.
That's the other Taylor.
Huh?
Yeah, that's mine.
That's the other.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It was the same comment for both, which was, I mean, it's okay. There's a couple things here. I want to push these into more graphic shapes. Let's get rid of these. I don't need these right now. Here we go. Okay. This is still hanging a little bit on a little bit of this sort of realism, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Here a little bit. Here you're starting to get a little more, but I think these kind of things is where you're starting to kind of figure it out.
Hmm. That was more towards like the end. The old lady in the first one was like the first one I did, and then I was like, okay, these are kind of like too realistic, and I realized that the last class that we had
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this guy, you're starting to head in that direction, but I would really, I mean, really push these for a while, okay? As far as
Okay.
maybe even making them where they're a little too maybe geometric. Like when I look at a face like this, I'm kind of seeing this. Sort of as a starting point, correct?
Yeah.
And I want to sort of get away from, you know, I can put this kind of thing. I want to get away from these sort of realistic eyes. This, you know, you can put that big ball on his nose. That's all right. Maybe push it a little bit. I'm going to push his bottom lip back a little bit. And I like this little jowly thing here. And then I might even just give him a sort of a graphic, sort of flat toppy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I'm really looking for here, I'm trying to really come up with a lot of sort of graphic solutions to these shapes. Now, as we go further into this, there's going to be a lot of room to sort of move around if you want to go a little more anatomical or something like that later on, okay? But right now, the reason I'm doing this is you got to start getting your, there's a transition that people kind of have to make with this, which comes out of, and I probably said this already in here. I get students all the time, and you do a character design exercise or something, and they just come out of life drawing or whatever, and they're way too realistic, way too anatomical. They spend way too much time on the drawing. And you have to learn to, like, that stuff is super important, but you got to learn to start transitioning into like seeing shapes and things like that, and start to, it's sort of like breaking everything back down and then building it all back up a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to sort of like, and then, you know, because I do that all the time when I stylize people, I leave little elements of anatomy in it, and sometimes they're much more realistic than others, and I push it all over the place. But I know how to reduce it down to nothing, basically, right? Just a real simple stuff, right? So let's see. You know, this guy, you're starting to get it a little bit. But here's another thing. None of this random mark making. Does that make sense? No random mark making. So, you know, if you're going to give me this, number one, I need a little more information on this. I mean, it can be really simple. Could just be as simple as just getting a highlight there. This is okay. It's a sort of graphic symbol, sort of. But then here, like if you want to do something like that, oops. Hang on. Yeah. Like this, I mean, there are ways of doing that where maybe I can come up with some sort of graphic shape, and then I start going, well, all the hair I'm going to do is this sort of, and I'd have to kind of figure it out a little bit. But, you know, how do I want to handle each one of these elements? And that's where I was kind of telling, like I wouldn't do these kind of realistic-y lips. I'd probably just put the, you know, a lot of times with lips, you're sort of, I mean, in cartooning, there's a million ways to do this, but, you know, I might just put this top one in shadow, and just kind of show the bottom lip. I might just reduce it down to just this, you know, or this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hang on. Damn it. Hang on. I got to answer this because somebody can't get in.
Did anyone else have trouble with the link today? Getting in?
The thing is every single class I go, if you have problems with that
Yeah.
ID link, and I don't get it. It's like, just use the link or the number.
I was like, I just use the number from the actual Zoom account or the Zoom app. So I don't even use the link.
So you think, Taylor? All right, and then I'm going to give them some ears, so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Reduce, reduce, reduce. Simplify,
Yeah.
simplify, simplify, and graphic, graphic, graphic. Right?
Yeah.
So the thing that I think is fun about doing this is trying to figure out, like for this kind of exercise that we're trying to do, is trying to figure out a fun thing to do, and I think it's a good exercise, is go, I'm going to make all the shapes in this just purely graphic shapes. Does that make sense? Like I'm going to interpret everything into a graphic shape, right?
Yeah.
Steven Silver's a good guy to look at for that. There's a million of them. There's a million of shows like that. Just where they have a super stylized, cartoony look. And if you look at it, they're basically a lot of graphic shapes, mostly, okay? Part of the reason, like, obviously a lot of that stuff happens is, like, if you look at Flintstones, and if you look at all that Hanna-Barbera stuff, Flintstones, Huckleberry Hound, all that stuff, if you look at it, it was, and I don't know if you guys know the history of that, but those were the first, like, I think the Flintstones was the first animated, like, primetime show, okay? That means you got to make it on a weekly basis. Now, what does that mean? It means you got to do a reduced animation, because you can't do, like, theatrical type of animation and in that time frame, okay? So, and the thing that always hit me about the Flintstones when I was a kid, because I kind of knew that, is it looked really good. It was super graphic. Like if you look at Flintstones, it's super graphic, right? And then they reused, like they would reuse, like if they were doing a walk cycle and Fred's like walking through town, you'd see the same building go by. A few seconds later, you'd see the same building go by, and it was fine though. It worked. Like I remember when I was a kid looking at that and going, I know why they're doing that, but it looks pretty good. Because I'd seen other animation when I was a kid. There's a version of Tom and Jerry that I loved because they had painted backgrounds that looked really good. And I didn't really care about Tom and Jerry, but I'd watch this cartoon because I liked looking at the backgrounds. And then there was another Tom and Jerry cartoon that I think was done in the 60s that I wouldn't watch because I hated the look of it. I just thought it was badly designed. I just didn't like the look of it, Lady and the Tramp, I love that movie because I love the background paintings. But anyway, the solution to that was to create very graphic, simple character shapes, right? I don't really feel like they sacrificed a lot. I think it actually worked pretty good, okay? So anyway, it's kind of fun to go, I'm just going to take this whole person or whatever, and I'm going to just reduce it down to everything's a graphic shape. You know what I mean? It's like that Pablo Lobato guy. I showed you guys him, right? It's literally everything's a graphic shape. And then you're just like, holy crap, that's perfect, portrait of Prince. And it's a bunch of random, it's not random, but it looks like random shapes. And it's like, that's a very specific, it's a good rabbit hole to give yourself that type of a challenge, like maybe a little further down the line. Give yourself, or now, just from a drawing perspective, just go, I'm going to reduce everything to a simple graphic shape, everything. Okay?
Okay.
Like this guy could be a lot of fun, I think. But again, I might go, hang on. I might go and just build this whole shape into one shape. Simplify this hat thing. And it goes right into his head shape. And again, I'm going to, if he's wearing glasses, and I might push him. Could just be a size thing. Here's the thing with this right now, we're just playing. I'm going to really push his mouth way down here. Where is he? He's layer 2. Okay. And then I'm going to figure out some way of handling the beard from a graphic perspective again, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this goes right into that. I just like playing with it and trying to figure it out. How does this beard work? And now I feel like this idea is not matching this idea. So I got to, figure that out. Like, how am I going to handle all this?
What are the frames of the glasses? Maybe the top part of the glasses is heavier and it thins out. Maybe I'm just going to use the triangle thing for his eyes. It's too big. I don't like that. You know, and then I'm going to cover some of this up. Or whatever, okay? That's still not it. But I'm trying to like a hat, you know, I might extend this out. Because now I go, okay, maybe I'll shorten this. Maybe I'll make it more of a cowboy hat. And then, you know, maybe I'll totally change the nose up. Maybe I'll totally change this up. Because all I'm looking for is stuff that gives me a jumping off point. Maybe I'm just going to cover, I don't want his eyes showing in this one. I think that's more fun. So I'm going to make this in shadow. And I would never just do crappy lines like that normally. I'm just doing it for speed. You know, and then I'll carry the shadow over here so I don't see his eyes, which I like better. Maybe I'll give him some big ears. You know. And then things like this, if I'm going to give him a kerchief or whatever that's called, a bandana, you know, I'm going to put the knot on the side bigger and more cartoony so it reads, right? It's like we were talking about before today, right?
Yeah.
I need to get a big read, especially with something. The
Yeah.
thing about, here's the thing about this kind of stuff, cartoony and all that. Go big. I mean, why not? You know what I mean? It's nothing but paper or whatever. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of
Yeah.
it. And like when we get into inking, you know, I might ink it more, because we're going to start talking about that tonight. I might do that rat tail thing. And to get a softer edge, obviously, right? So it's a nicer, softer edge. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But you got to like decide, like, I'm going to give him a little bit of a chin. I'm going to give him some side. Actually, maybe I'll just carry this up and give him lamb chops or mutton chops. Okay? Huh?
I'm laughing that you said lamb chops.
It's mutton chops, right?
Yeah, mutton.
So you're the mutton chop police?
No,
Yeah.
I'm just laughing that you said lamb chops. It was funny.
I think they're, you know, obviously this one, we got this kind of square idea going on. You know, and then push this. Like, okay, I've got this. Can I break this down to something really graphic? Get away from, I would try and get away from those realistic eyes a little bit. I'm going to push his nose up even harder or even higher. And I like this shape, kind of. You know, give him this kind of graphic business under the eyes. I'm going to drop his ears way down. I'm going to give him, you know, maybe I'll just keep the head shape going. Same idea. Might put some of the top of this head into shadow. Why do I keep wanting to put in his shadow? Because I get a big graphic dark shape right there. You know, maybe this guy, he's got a little bulge right there because he's wearing a really tight starched collar. Maybe a bow tie. Maybe he's got a little of that. Here, maybe a little of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So do it as a game. All you guys should do this as a game. Go, how graphic can I get these things? And you can push them out of there later. Okay. So I want you guys to understand we're going to try different stylistic things. This is me trying to get you to break out of just drawing people. Does that make sense? We're going to talk about stylizing people and caricaturing people. That's a different thing. Does that make sense? I mean, you can, some of this stuff's going to apply to that, obviously, but you want to get, I think it's really nice to have a broad range of what, where if I go out and draw or whatever, if I'm drawing at home, whatever I'm doing, I go through a lot of stylistic variation, okay? Because I don't want to draw the same way all the time. So sometimes I feel like drawing like this. Sometimes I feel like I'll go and just be drawing super realistic. Sometimes it's just kind of stylized, on and on and on, right? Just depends on what mood you're in, okay? Or what job somebody puts on your plate, you know? Hey, we want that cartoony stuff you do. Okay, cool. You know? Oh, now my back again. Taylor.
Yes.
So same thing. I don't have yours to pull up here, but it was the same comment I have in my notes.
Okay.
Let's try to get really graphic, okay?
Yeah.
And you can see what a
I
good,
realized that after.
huh?
I was just gonna say I realized that after class too. Like I finished all of them and then I was like, these might be a little too realistic.
But you see what a bold read this thing is? All these?
Yeah.
They're a pretty bold read. I mean, they're really readable. You know, and then again, then we can do a little bit of our, the stuff we know about line. I want to bring this forward, so I'm going to darken that up a little. Same thing we did the other one here. And then sometimes I hit the end again. Usually I'm cleaner with it. And it'll start to indicate like a little core shadow as it's turning into the light.
Mike, you probably didn't download mine from the still.
You sure? No, yeah, because I have notes on it, so that means I saw them.
Well, I also posted them on Instagram though.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How did I not see them on Instagram?
You did see them. You liked them.
Oh, I did? I'd have to look again. I'd have to go look. I don't think he's a nice guy. But anyway, okay. You know, and that's one, you know, I don't go, you know, what if I turn his head a little bit this way? You know, can I puff it out a little bit? Put that axis down so it moves over. So you're starting to place all your elements where they should be, okay? Because it might be cartooning, but you still want to, I'm going to drop his hat down a lot here. I'm going to shorten his head a little bit. Simplify his nose a little more. And I like, okay, so see this line right here? That's a random line. I like that. Okay, so now we got a different take on it. I'm gonna put a bigger hat band on here that's also a random line, but I'm just gonna go with it. And then I'm not gonna do the same kind of solution for the band. And then, by the way, I could come in here and go, I'm gonna do the band this way this time. But maybe come in here. I don't know if this will work or not. We'll see. And do a different kind of sort of stylistic end here. And these would have to be dark. Okay, so you're starting to get the same idea of something pulling from the dark, splitting up, turning into a halftone, and then going into the light. But now it's just this sort of graphic idea of that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Yeah.
A shine can be a graphic idea. Hair can be is a graphic idea. Faces, the bags under your eyes, you know. Just like this, there was that random line that for the what looked like it was the mouth, and I go, that's cool, and I just go with it, right? I like this stuff to suggest to me, and I like it to sort of drive the car a little bit. Where I'm in the back seat, I'm yelling at him. I'm backseat driving, but I'm not driving, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I hate this one on the lower right, by the way, the one I did. Okay, on and on. Okay, this one too is a fun one because this you could kind of go. Again, I push these. You know, however I'm going to do that, and then we got this very realistic nose, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want a super realistic nose. Oops. I have to recalibrate my pen. I just got a weird message from something. Can you guys see that when I'm doing this?
Yes.
Yes.
Very exciting, right?
What does that mean? That little target thing?
It has to calibrate. That's how it calibrates. Because Wacom, I don't know. Okay, so this one, I don't know. Maybe I'll reduce the nose a little bit. I don't like that. Hang on. I'm trying to think of some solution to this. I don't like that. I like the sort of that indentation, but I feel like I got to repeat it here. I like this small, narrow bottom part of the face. But the main thing here is that, you know, you could really do something, again, with that hair, again, using that sort of same technique where we're starting to turn it that way. And I could just,
Okay.
I can just leave it like that up here, you know, and then fatten up my brush. Just fill the rest of it. So the reason I'm talking about this so much is because we're going to start talking about inking. And you can kind of start these things just as black, but as they pull into the light, you're going to want to you're going to want to rat tail it. Okay. And I'm doing a really crappy job right here because I'm not turning. By the way, that's because I'm not turning the canvas. Then this is going to be behind that mass. And then I usually will use this other side when it's this graphic. I can lose the line on this side of the face because why? Because I can just outline it with the silhouette of the hair or butt up against it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I like to, once in a while, I like to find places where I can bump a dark against a light and then lose the line, right? Because then I'm varying. It's the same thing as basic design, basically. I'm varying. I've got line, I've got size relationships, I've got light dark, I've got graphic shapes butting up against each other, I've got big shapes, small shapes, I've got, you know, on and on and on. I've got all these variety of different things going on. We tend to always put that into the contrast category, you know, light and dark, you know, which that is important, but it's like, well, tall and next to short, and spacing and randomness and not repeating and asymmetrical and all those other things you learn in basic design all come into play. Straight against curves, all that stuff, right? It's all, what is straight against curves? It's another form of contrast, correct? Big shape to a small shape, it's another form of contrast. Thin line to a thick, you know, thin to thick line, contrast. I mean, all that stuff falls in. That's why we say it's like that's what you're accessing for the rest of your life is kind of what you learn in basic design, even though a lot of times when you take basic design, you're like, ugh. You know what I mean? Because it depends on how it's taught. Because I remember having it and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't like this. You know, I liked learning all that stuff, but a lot of times it's just like, this is boring, you know, or just the way it's presented to me is boring. I didn't like it. But then, by the way, I had a student, or not student, I had a fellow student at Art Center, and this guy's a monster, and guy from Germany. And he taught me a lesson because I was sitting there going, oh, this is boring. Well, it was boring because I wasn't doing anything with it. It wasn't the teacher, right? So, and I wish I had these drawings. Maybe I can find them. Anyway, so I don't know if you guys ever had this exercise. It's dissipation and gathering, right? So a lot of times you just take little pieces of paper or whatever, and you go, I'm going to gather them this way, and then they sort of dissipate this way. They're just abstractions. They're just little bits of paper or whatever. I think ours were like little cutout things or whatever. I can't remember. I think that's what it was, right? Rupert didn't do that. He did, and this blew me away because it's my first term there. So we had to do dissipation. We had to do gathering, dissipation, and a couple other things I can't remember now. He did these super bitchin' pen and ink drawings of wolves in the snow. And I mean, they were bitchin', okay? And he had them all, like there was a hill, like it was all stark. It was just like white paper and black ink, right? And of course he did it with a dip pen and a brush, you know? And the wolves were like coming over the hill and then sort of gathering as a group as they came towards you. Then he had one that was a top view down where they had all gathered around a kill and they were all eating it. So they'd all gathered up around that and they were eating it. And then he had them like coming over the hill in this ominous way and all dissipating away from each other. And I was like, holy crap. You know what I mean? It was just so cool how he took such a simple exercise and totally elevated it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it also planted his flag because that was the first term that all of us were there. And it was like, holy crap, you're crazy good. You know what I mean? Like he totally planted his flag. It's just the way he looked. He's super prolific, you know? And I could tell you a million stories about that guy where he just did crazy stuff like that. But it made me go, why am I not elevating this project? You know what I mean? Like I'm sitting here complaining about it. He elevated. Yeah. He made it interesting for himself, and I should have done that. I could have done that. I didn't think of doing it. Because all I was doing was thinking about getting the project done. I want to get this project done. That's a bullshit way to think. You should be thinking like, how do I do that? How do I do what he just did? How do I elevate everything? You know, because he elevated one of the most basic projects there is.
Yeah.
Okay. So graphic shapes, guys, okay? Hair is a mass. Remember that? I'll put this video up. It's probably like 15, 20 minutes. And it's just a real early basic discussion around hair, okay? Okay, did anybody get a chance to see any of that inking part of that thing?
I saw like the beginning part of it.
Okay, I just put it up today, so I didn't expect you guys. I was hoping to get it up like a couple days ago, but Jesus, it took all day. The reason it went up, if you look at the time, it went up at like 4:30 in the morning. That's when it finally uploaded. Okay, because it took like 3 hours to render it out of Premiere. Then it took I don't know how many hours to upload it to YouTube. It's not even that big either. It's like 12 gigs. It's not that big. Okay, so what I want to start talking about here is what's in that video is what we're going to do. I want an animal stylized, and I want a very simple background, okay? So it could be just basically like that. I mean, now I look at it and I go, now I want to do a donkey, right? I don't know why. I want to do a donkey like a pack mule and stack all the stuff up on them. Anyway. It could just be like I did, where it's just a couple of simple tree silhouettes, so on and so forth. Okay, we'll probably be a little bit short today because I'm going to have to set this up before I can really start talking about it. But I do want to go over materials and some exercises you guys can start doing, because I think you need to start. I think, like I just said, going in and doing these things like with a brush pen, your sketchbook, and that kind of thing, and starting to get a handle on it. Because I don't know, because like a lot of times you guys get something way faster than I expect. I think inking's pretty tricky because you're using a brush. You've got to get very fine with it. You've got to get your motor skills really together with it. And you got to design it. It takes a lot of design. Let me see if I can pull it. I want to talk a little more about the kind of heavy black inking like they do in comic books and things like that after this, okay? Because we got to get a handle on this first, okay? Mm-hmm. Hang on. I know I can find this. Now I'm going to see if I can find some, I'm going to use comic book examples just because they're good examples. It's not quite what we're doing, but in a weird way, it kind of is. We'll do that a little later. Oops.
For next week, do you want us to have just loose thumbnails or something a little more developed with this project?
I'm going to want two things. I'm basically going to want, and I want to start talking about this in a minute. I'm going to go a little bit of ink. Then I want to talk about the design of the thing or whatever. So I want an animal. Why do I want an animal? Because it's not just a rigid object, okay? It's got fur, and I want it anthropomorphized, okay? So I don't want a straight drawing of an animal. Like mine, the demo I gave you guys, it's a bear actually that I know, okay? And the bears in the fall drink a lot of beer over the brewery. So that's who that bear is. But and his name's Torpedo. You guys probably know that. But anyway, something like that. So that part of it, and the reason I'm starting off this graphic shapes, because I was just thinking about this. So we start with this graphic shapes, but I actually now want to put that into practice. I want you to start designing it, and you can have, I don't expect the whole thing to be super graphic because then it's going to be a flat wash kind of thing, and I don't want it to just be a flat wash. But I want you to kind of start off with that basic idea of sort of building it out of these simple shapes, and then we can kind of soften it up, and then we've got to design the ink, and then we've got to ink it. Does that make sense? Now, everything I do in every class, again, you guys are going to notice, it's like we don't just go, okay, no, we're going to ink it. No, you got to go through the process. And the biggest, to me, part of this, one of the biggest parts of this process is learning how to design your ink and learning how to get this thing designed well enough and drawn well enough that it's okay to ink it. Does that make sense? You do not want to get in there with your brush. I mean, you can do it if you've been doing it forever, maybe. You don't want to go in there and start trying to correct drawing stuff and all that stuff when you're sitting there inking it. Because like if you screw that up, it's ink, man. You know what I mean? I mean, you can come in with like graphic white or something like that. But like if you come in with graphic white, it's also probably going to not take the watercolor exactly right. You know what I mean? Because a lot of graphic white, I think it's just really heavy duty gouache. And by the way, graphic white is just an art version of whiteout. Okay? You can still get it because there's different names for it. So like I saw some Rick Griffin inks. They had a Rick Griffin show in Laguna Beach, and he used to do these things for like, he came out of surf culture and hippie culture. So he'd do all these like stuff about surfing and stuff. They had his inks there for some, whatever he did, probably Surfer Magazine or something. They were mind blowing. Okay. But what was interesting, you could see everywhere that he went back in with graphic white and carved out his shapes, like, fixed stuff and carved shapes and all that kind of stuff. Because obviously you don't see that when they print it, right? But those inks were so crafted, it was insane, okay? And like, if you can ever go see any of these people who are just straight up inkers like that, like in the comic book world, I don't even care. Like I picked up I don't really read comic books, but I picked up comic books just for the inking because the inking is so totally insane, okay? And these guys, man, the control they have over their tools and the graphic language, how big their graphic language is insane. You know what I mean? They just got it down, Usually there's a penciler and then an inker, but some guys do both. especially guys like Mignola who have a very specific language. I mean, his language is all totally reduced graphic shapes, right? So like if you look at this is a good example. Hang on. That's designing for ink. Okay, now this is a good example of using super heavy blacks to hold half of it together. Okay, now look, he's doing right here kind of what we're talking about, where when this heavy area here goes into light, he's pulling all these little rat tails. You see that? What does it do? It's otherwise you just got a hard edge at ends, and that's just going to look weird, right? It's got to feel like it's fading into another thing, right? And then he's got areas where he doesn't do that. This one right here is just a black area, right? Look at the grass and stuff, right? I love this right here, the way he pushed the whole face together. And then he's going to just come in with a brush and do all this stuff here. And then look, he's got this little darker line. So that'd be a little trickier to do with ink. You'd have to water it down a little bit. If you really wanted to have it be a little grayish like that and then have that blacker line there, then I couldn't go pure black to pure black, or I'm not going to see it. My guess is he's just saying that whole thing's black. But just remember that little, how that separates. This is another way, this dark, going from this dark, and then you get this sort of core shadow, and then it goes into the light. Why do you put that there? Taylor.
You want to ask that question again?
Why does he put this dark line right here?
To kind of like carve out that cheekbone. It kind of throws in that anatomy.
It's a little bit of that. It's really, it's a transitional thing. So otherwise you would probably just have, this dark shape and it just ends. That doesn't necessarily feel right. It feels unfinished, right? Now how he's going to handle that in ink, I don't know. You'd have to see it. And then look, here's the rat tail thing again. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's like a obvious, the reason I keep bringing that up is it's a super obvious trick. It's super simple, right? It's used all the time. This whole thing is just going to be in silhouette. And then once again, right here, where the top of the ear is, he's pulling that little halftone thing again. He designed the hair here a little bit, right? And I like this guy here. I mean, there's a couple things here that I think are really interesting. Just this, forget about the inking part. For all you guys are, wherever you're at in your drawing, this drawing right here should be a little bit of an aha thing, where you're like, holy crap, you can mask the whole face like that. You know what I mean? Like you just mask the whole face into basically two shapes, right? That should be an aha moment for you if you haven't seen that before, because you can do a lot of that just in life drawing. You can do a lot of that just in drawing in general. Okay, where you're masking. I mask the eye shadows in or eye sockets in all the time. I mask the bottom of the nose. What do you call that? Shadow casting off the nose, and then I connect that to this one on the bottom of the lip, and I can connect all those together and leave a little triangle right there and cover this whole side of the face like that. And build the whole face like that, pencil too, right? And then you're getting in all this cool designy stuff, right? That's why I like going out and drawing from life, because it's all right in front of you. And you see somebody sitting under, like sometimes you'll go someplace, a lot of places do this, so they have a light sitting right over the table, like one of those little lights that goes like that or whatever. Well, what that does is it casts a hard light on people, and then it throws this whole business and casts a real hard shadow under the nose, and it pushes all this eye socket stuff into shadow, and then just go after those graphic shapes. God, that makes me look old. Every time I take off my glasses, I look like 20 years older. Okay, and then these little ones up here, okay? So let's look at another one. Wait, maybe there's another one there. Hang on. I'm not a big fan of that kind of crap. Okay. I don't like that one. Trying to find a good one. By the way, you guys. Okay, so what I'm trying to get to is you need to design that in your pencil. Does that make sense? So when I'm going through the pencil process, which I put in that video. So that video, I deliberately did that the way I did it is because it goes rough, doodle, refinement, transfer, how much you need to transfer, ink, watercolor, gouache, and a little Prisma. Okay, it goes through that entire process, right? So we're starting to get into a little bit of mixed media and things like that. Okay, I don't always go in and put any pencil on it. I didn't really need to in that one. I did it just so to show you guys. But you'll also see the reason I did that is I can do it with gouache or whatever. But I hit the kind of the bottom of his nose a little bit with an orange Prisma. Why? Because he's in an environment where I can push everything because it's it's cartoony. He's on. He's walking. I warmed up the ground deliberately. There's some green in it, but there's also just some warmth. I do that deliberately because then I put a lot of green in there.
Wait, are you actually showing us the image, or are you talking about the video? Because we only see the comic pages.
I'm talking about the video.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not going to go through it right now. But I'm putting those colors in there. I'm thinking about those colors because we'll do a quick color comp in this too. I'm putting those, like that heavy green on the ground, I'm putting it in there because I'm going to bounce a bunch of that green up into his fur. Why do I do that? So it breaks up all that brown. There's a lot of brown in that, right? I take some of the orangey kind of idea and I pull that up into his bottom half of his body so it gets some color in there. And then his nose would be wet, right? So I can take a little Prisma and I can hit that with a little orange and it looks like a little bit of reflected light coming from his fur or maybe just the sun bouncing around. Why do I do that? It breaks everything up. It's getting that nice little sparkle of color in it. Does that make sense? I don't want to just sit around and have everything be brown. It's just not very interesting, okay? So I've got to find ways, and then you'll see in it, I painted it right up to the edge of his arm, okay? Because I knew later I'm going to put a blue sky in there, and I'll hit that with blue, and that'll, give it some of that blue reflected light from the sky, right? Adding color into it. Also adds interest into it, and it also puts my bear in the same environment that he's walking through because he's reflecting colors and things that are around him. So it doesn't feel cut out and placed into an environment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So
when you're planning this, you need to start planning out a little bit to color and go that kind of thing. I'm gonna paint that green grass down there really hot so I can bounce it. I'm gonna paint a little orangey ground color in there so I can bounce it. I know I'm gonna put a blue sky in there, so I'm gonna save that little sliver on the side of his arm so I can reflect some blue light in there. All that kind of stuff. Okay, you want to start thinking about that. You want to start thinking about the environment. And also, this is cartoony, man. Go nuts. Okay, go nuts. Push everything. Push your shapes. Push your character. And all I did with the background, and you can do this. I just put some silhouettes of pine trees back there. I flooded them with water, and then I just dropped watercolor into it, and that was that. Okay. Then I go in and played around with them a little bit. I didn't really do anything with it. Why did I do that? Why did I not ink the trees? Taylor, Jesse.
it's too dense.
In the foreground.
Say that again.
Which one of us?
Jesse.
To not detract from the bear in the foreground.
It's a little bit of that, but what that really does is, and there's a reason I want you to do it, but the reason I do that, you got to understand where, I always say everything's right tool for the right job, okay? So like when we start inking this thing, it'll be sometimes you'll grab a nib, sometimes you grab a brush, sometimes whatever. And then when you're creating the illustration, I think it would just been overkill and heavy-handed to have. I want the trees to sit way back there. So everything that bear's got on them is black, like dense black. So it's as contrasty against, you know, a lighter value as I can get, right? So if those just sit back there with no ink on them, what are they going to do? They're going to go way back there. And that's what I want, right? A guy really good to look at for that kind of stuff is Bill Watterson, the Calvin and Hobbes guy. Like he'll go pretty heavy on the blacks, but certain areas he'll just leave it just beautiful watercolor wash. It's really colorful. And he knows when to let off of all that ink. But then sometimes he'll put like right in the foreground, he'll just take a fat brush or something and just put a tree trunk in there, just a big black mark. And man, it just pops forward. You know what I mean? And then he'll leave all the foliage on the ground alone, and then he'll ink the hell out of his two characters. And then, you know, and he's picking and choosing everywhere he's going to hit with that ink. Okay? Because that ink is powerful. You know what I mean? That amount of just dense, rich black like that is a really powerful tool, okay? Visually, okay? As long as you design it correctly.
Let me see if I can find another one. Yeah, that's terrible. This one's kind of interesting because they got them. I mean, I'm not really into this kind of stuff, but so what? Hang on.
Why not Bernie Wrightson?
I was just going to pull them up,
I knew it.
But I just saw this. I'm looking at pencils right now. So look at all this right here. Look at all this. There it is again. You see it? That's how they're transitioning from this deep black. Look everywhere. Pulling these half tones. Look at this is cool. He curved it to show that curve a little bit. And this stuff's just telling the inker. Look, there it is. You guys see that? Look at it. It's all over the place in this thing.
Yeah, this is David Finch, right?
I don't know.
Yes, David Finch.
I have no idea who it is.
Yeah.
And then look at how he buried all this stuff in dark. And then look at this cool hatching right here. Super design. You see what I'm saying? Now with this first one, we don't have to get this crazy with all the dense blacks. You can play around with it. Like you might have, I don't know, like maybe if a character's standing like leaning on something or whatever, and this arm back here is showing, maybe that back arm can just go to a pure black, right? You can experiment. And what I want you to see in these pencils, look at that right there. That's cool. I'd like to see the final color, you know, and then cross hatching up here and stuff. And then look at that foreground element. Yeah, so I suppose in GHT. So this guy was an inking monster. He did this kind of craziness, right? That's so obsessive. That's what I love about it. I love obsessive looking stuff.
Yeah, it took him years. He talked about how like he was only ever thinking about that, and like after he finished the comic, he just was like, "I'm empty. I got nothing."
This is insane.
Yeah, it is. Like, you know what's crazy about that is like that all has to be designed, and it all has to be every mark's thought about. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't get through any of this. You got it. Like, you screw that up, you screwed it up.
Yeah.
But what's weird is I had like the second one. It's not the first one, I don't think. And it's really weird because I brought it into class, and it doesn't have this one in it, but it's still a Frankenstein one, and it's cool. But like all of a sudden, like halfway through the comic or whatever, it's like, I don't know, maybe 5-10 pages that are totally shitty. And I'm like, there's no way this is Bernie Wrightson. There's no way. He couldn't do work this bad. And it's weird. I don't know why. I want to find the story out actually. For some reason, like those 10 pages, they had some other guy illustrate. And it's really weird because Bernie Wrightson is at such a crazy level with this stuff. Like you buy those things for Bernie's stuff, right? Then all of a sudden you throw this. I mean, the guy's not even good that did those pages, or like the hands look really weird and stuff. And it's like, what happened there? I bet you it's some story where the publisher's like, yeah, we don't need you. You're a pain in the ass. We can just go get somebody else. I bet you it's something like that. Or maybe he walked off because he wasn't making the money, or it was a contract thing, or who knows. But anyway, but he did a bunch of these crazy. Look at this one.
It's just insane. It's like there's just so much in it.
I love it. I think it's bitching. It's total obsession, you know? And then look at this. Like, I love the way he does the little water beakers and stuff. And then this, and then look, all he's using is these half-toned or hatched lines. Look, he's not, if you look at it, what it's really doing on a lot of this stuff, it's just following the form. So basically here he's just following the form. This is just following the form. This is following the form. So a lot of this stuff, and then look, this one's following the form, but then he hit it with a brush on the end to give it a core shadow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your stuff has to be better than this. And then look at this smart decision. He just put this black shape to define all this other stuff around it. That's just like, I love that stuff, okay? And then he goes back, and then look, this is wrapping around the form. This is following the form, and then he put these first initial lines down, then he went back over it, maybe with it might have been the same pen, and it just went thicker. And then these little graphic shapes, I mean, you know, and just pure hatching in here. On and on and on, right? Yeah, he's a badass. But he did a lot of the stuff too. This is more Frankenstein stuff. Look at this. This is an interesting thing for yeah, it's too small. These are great to look at for how he's handling the organic things like the tree bark and all that kind of stuff. You really want to go down the rabbit hole of this stuff, and I'll link him. Let me write it down. Of this stuff, because it's going to give you a bunch of ideas. It's going to give you a bunch of ideas as to how to handle certain shapes and things like that, okay? I want to find the ones he did that are really organic. And then look, here's another one. Hopefully it's not small. Yeah, it is. But look at these back here. It's something I do all the time, actually. You just hatch straight down with these trees in the background and just let them fade on the bottom, okay? Now, in this thing that we're going to do, you could handle your background like that. You don't have to handle it the way I did, okay? You could do something like that. You could get a crow quill, which is a really fine pen, and just crow quill it and just leave it like that. You know, maybe throw a wash over it. You could do that because then the line weight of it is what's going to push it back. It's so much thinner in line weight, obviously, than the foreground. Okay. Let me look at chat. Hey, Jesse.
Yes.
We're going to sort of jump back to the shape idea when we start talking about how we're going to design this thing.
Okay. Right on.
But I mean, we're going to, to me, that it's an icebreaker. We have to start doing that, but we got to start thinking about this project, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I want to start getting into. I'm really excited. Like I said, it's one of those things where a lot of times the class surprises me and I go, holy crap, they're like getting this really fast or something. It's really cool when that happens. I don't know if it will, because I think inking's hard. I think there's a learning curve. There is definitely a learning curve on it. Okay. So I'm not expecting overnight that everybody's a monster inker, but we've got it. It's also beyond just doing this traditionally or whatever. If there's a lot of this stuff that when you go over to the digital environment again, you're going to know much more about how to render shapes and how to do graphic things and punch up your stuff, because you can pull from these techniques into that world. Does that make sense? It really gives you a nice, I just think everybody needs to be well-rounded. That's my thing, okay? Let me see if I can find one more. Look at this one. So this guy was super into horror. That was his thing. Okay. More of a hatched idea, but you got some really, look at the hair right here, all brush. Okay. Actually, most of this is probably brush. I'm going to talk a little bit about tools tonight, even though I talked about them in the video. I still want to talk about them a little bit. Make sure that we're clear on everything. Okay. So so is everybody understanding what I'm saying about how in the pencil stage you've got to design this thing? Okay. So when you're doing, look at this one. Like, look at the grass. All this stuff, look, it's all texture, and he's using the brush to pop out these little shapes and things like that, and then he goes back in and hatches over a little bit, or he probably hatched before. Then look, again, following the form. That looks a little bit like ink wash right there. I don't want to do ink wash on this one. I want to talk about that later. I want this to be pure line to watercolor and then some gouache, okay? You might not even need gouache, by the way, okay? I use gouache sort of, it's nice to not, that whole demo I did, I just winged it, okay? So I didn't have any, I just took a doodle, I refined it, and I painted it, right? So I didn't have a color comp or anything. So the gouache gives me a little bit of confidence that, like, I'm gonna want to reflect this green in here. I'll do it with gouache, you know what I mean? I don't have to save all those whites and all that kind of stuff. Because you want to do it pure watercolor, then you got to save your lighter values and your whites and all that kind of stuff, okay? And I mentioned in the video, if you haven't done watercolor before, you're going light to dark. You're not going dark to light, okay? And the thing I like about watercolor is I always say it's a sneak up on it medium, okay? Because you're going light to dark, you have a lot of time and a little bit of forgiveness, or whatever you want to call it, to before you kind of have to jump in with the really darks and all that kind of stuff. It's a nice kind of, you build into it kind of thing, okay? Does that make sense? Anyway, look at the tree. You can just tell this guy just loved doing this, period. I mean, I think he loved getting something and going, how far can I go with this? I love the way he did all this stuff and look at a lot of this stuff in the dress or whatever is very sort of decorative. It's not as descriptive. It's a little bit decorative. It goes really dark down here. By the way, there's white ink too, okay, which is pretty opaque, okay? So if you want to go in on something and then hit it with a little bit of white ink, you can do that too, okay? Anyway, here's a weird one though. Let me see if I can find this. What happened to my window? Oh, there it is.
Somebody figured out that Iggy Pop looks just like Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein. Did you ever see that?
Ew.
Oh
Isn't
my
that crazy?
god. That's whoa.
Isn't that a trip?
They're freaking
Yeah,
twins.
that was-
Huh?
They're twins. Oh my god.
I don't know why this has been. I'm in this Bernie Wrightson group on like Facebook, and this popped up on it. But it's like that guy is so crazy looking. What's his name? Iggy Pop. Anyway, he's like 70 now. He still looks like that. Okay. One more thing. Let's look at this. So on the other end of that scale. I want to go through a few people here. So a little on the other side of the scale, right? Really good design, obviously. Okay. Now in this one, he is using quite a bit of ink even on the foliage, and even here he popped out that edge right there, which is cool. But then look, the shadow, pure watercolor, right?
Mhm.
And this guy, you guys probably know this guy. You know. This is Greg Ruth. You guys know him?
Mm-mm.
He's an ink monster too. He uses Sumier ink, I think. I don't know if he does a lot of drawings for these things. I think he might kind of go straight in. I'm going to link a documentary on this guy. You guys got to watch it because it's interesting. I think they show him working a little bit. And he's just kind of built this whole career out of just doing like this ink stuff. He does some pencil stuff too, I think. Okay, so a whole different thing, right? It looks like he's using a lot of ink wash too. Look at this one. So why is that working? Silhouette, right? It's all silhouette. Look at this, how he handled this little squirrel, right? So he wrote this, I forgot the name of the comic. Lost Boy, maybe? Look at this. He does a lot of this brush, like almost dry brush thing. Okay, that's brush stuff. Bigger brush, you know, probably a little bit dry, it looks like. Or maybe he's using I don't know what he's using. I don't know if it's a bristle brush. I don't know what he's using. But look, see that, how it's kind of dry brushy right there? You guys know what dry brush is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so we're talking about these rat tail halftony things, dry brush, pure black, and then just graphic shapes to describe things, just flat black graphic shapes to describe things, and massing with black, correct? Now on this thing, you can go much more linear, but if you have areas where you can figure out to do a pure black or something, and also, when you start doing these, I want you to work small, okay? And I'll talk about it in a second. Don't work big and then try and work out your whole design like in the first couple. You got to play a little bit and play small and just figure out what you want to do, okay? Everybody always thinks about the finish, and I think that kind of screws you up. Okay, on and on. He does a lot of this kind of thing. And it feels like a thicker brush and he's just pulling it down. It doesn't feel like he's doing it individually. He might be, I don't know. And another thing, you guys, look at this. This is something common you're going to see constantly. We just talked about it with the Bernie Wrights and stuff. Following the form, correct? That's like I know it sounds obvious, but it's a big key to ink. Okay, so you can, and the guy you can really see it with is sorry. So there's that same idea, correct? It's the same idea, that sort of half-tony idea, pulling these rat tails out. But what's he doing? And I always say this is basically your basic drawing thing. If you look at her hair, he's handling these big masses like a cylinder. Does that make sense? So, you know, especially here, right there. Like Gibson's thing to me is like he always handles the hair like a cylinder. Probably not always, but he does it a lot, okay? And then look here. Following that form, following that form, following that form, following that, on and on and on. Do you guys see that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a really good guy to look at for the simplicity of how pen and ink works, okay? Because he's basically always following the form. It's almost like everything he thinks about is, I mean, that's how he works. He sees planes and he follows the planes, okay? Anyway, go down this rabbit hole. I'll link all these people. And look at, and again, look at this right here in the sleeve. These like abstract graphic black shapes, and then he goes back into hatching again. But then he jumps back into that little pen. He's using a pen probably. He's probably doing all these with a brush, I'm guessing. But then he's going in and hitting those little black graphic shapes to show that little bend, right? I want you guys to go down this rabbit hole, okay? Because you got to start looking at all this stuff. And one of the key, and then look, there's that idea again that we were just looking at in the hair. He's just following this straight down, changes the plane right there, right? Look at this kid, he's got nothing. He's got a couple of graphic shapes, he's got a couple of geometric shapes. And then look, following the side of this box, following the side of the, you know, on and on and on, okay? Big graphic, look at her hat, right here. 2 big brush marks, that's it, right? You gotta learn that, okay? And you gotta learn how to start designing that stuff, okay? That's where your pencils are gonna come in, okay? Anyway, and then one other one, let me do one more. This is kind of a different thing. And then Heinrich Clay. It's a totally different style, okay? A lot of Heinrich Clay stuff that you see, like this might not be. It has much sketchier feel, and I think a lot of stuff you see is sketches of his, okay? But look at you guys, still following the form a little bit. Like here, 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 you know, on this turtle. And the tree, there's that same tree trick. Do you guys see that? You hatch it straight down, fade it, right? Then you don't have to show the ground plane and all that stuff. And it kind of suggests like a foggy ground or a misty day or whatever, okay? So it's a nice abstract way to convey that information. And he's known for this stuff. Like doing all these crazy animal poses, like, you know, rhinoceros playing baseball or whatever. And I think you guys can see the Fantasia influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could find his hippos. Look at this. He's throwing all this shit out of his head, by the way. You can find his hippos and, you know, and the alligators. It's super badass. There's some watercolor thrown over it. Watercolor. So start going through all these. I'm going to post them. And start, you know, getting interested in the different ways people are handling it, okay? And then go down the rabbit hole of all these guys, because they're more cartoony. Hang on. Much more cartoony, right? Look at the readability on that thing. You know what I mean? Like Jack Davis was a total badass. Look. That's sort of the same trick back here as we were just talking about with the trees. Do you see that? Pulling that hatching line down, fading it out, right? A lot of hatching, a lot of just kind of straight line work on this one. Look at the shoulder right here. You see that? How those come down in a curve to describe that shoulder blade? Oops. These guys are all Mad Magazine guys. Yeah, you got to look at Mort Drucker. You got to look at Jack Davis. You got to look at all those guys from like the 60s and 70s. You know, they were just monsters with ink. Okay. And by the way, look at these things like this. This is Mort Drucker. Mort Drucker would do these crazy. Let me see if I can find one. He would do these crazy like 2-page spreads of like all these celebrities. And he'd nail the likeness on, there'd be 50 celebrities in some scene where they're in a ballroom, and he'd have them turning all different sorts of directions and getting a perfect likeness on all of them. You know what I mean? And a stylized likeness on all of them, okay? I mean, this guy was a monster draftsman, okay? And then look at these solutions again. Look at the cheek. You know, go through all this stuff and look at all this language in here. Okay? Okay, so on this thing, what we're going to do, we're going to want to get thumbnails. Hang on. Oops. Let me screen grab this real quick. Did I already screen grab the room?
Yeah.
Let me make sure. That's weird. Oh, okay. God, I have no recollection of that. Let me do one more. Okay, that's good. All right, so I don't care what the animal is on this. That's up to you, obviously. And I'm going to want you to start working small, okay? Work small, okay? I keep getting people and I go, work small, and they go, like with the household object things, like here's a picture of the object, and then here's the object they made of. I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to grade that, that's 4 pages? It's one drawing. On 2 pages of one drawing. No, it's small, okay? And I'm keeping this fairly simple because this is a mechanics thing. I want you to start learning ink, okay? So, and just run through a bunch of these. Just go, I'm going to do, because now I got donkey on the brain. I'm going to do donkey. Make them a little more broken down, maybe. Right now, I just got to get the donkey into my hands. Don't they have bigger ears? I don't know. It's a little too horsey, but that's okay for now. I'm going to put this on there. I'm going to put frying pan. I'm going to put wood box. I'm going to put coffee cup. I'm going to put something here. And put something there. And I'm going to put something up here. And I'm going to have them looking at the viewer. And now I'm going, okay, well, I'm probably going to want a cooler pose. But for now, at least it's an idea. And then maybe I'm going to have just a silhouette of, you know, the trading post or something back there. And I'll just do that as a silhouette. Maybe I'll put a couple of trees. And all this stuff will just be silhouetted in watercolor. And then right here, I'm going to put, it should be like this. I'm going to put, then I'm going to go, do I want to do this, the shadow value is just a big black ink with a brush, which would actually be nice. Or do I want to come in here and establish the ground plane with my hatch lines? Oops. Or this way. I can do that with my brush. I'll probably do it with my brush. You know, and then all this back here again. And I'd probably do my hatch trick right here, where I just do that and have it fade out. And maybe even have this just fade out. And I'd probably do, like I said, I'd probably just do this thing back here just in watercolor and let it sit back there. Does that make sense? You guys are frozen. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, because you were frozen from, I don't know if I was frozen. Was I frozen?
I think it was you.
I think it was you.
I mean, it could be me.
Okay, did you hear what I just said?
Sorry, I didn't. I had a 5-year-old knocking at my door. What did I miss?
I
Sorry.
don't care about that.
Your computer froze. I didn't hear it.
You didn't hear?
I did not hear.
Okay. Did you see what I was just drawing?
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay. Basically, I'm going, okay, that's one idea. And if you notice, I haven't really determined what's on his, you know, what's on his tied up, you know, tied on his back or I haven't determined that yet. I don't care about that yet. I'll figure that out later. It's an idea. And then I'm going to probably go, I want to get it way more. It's one idea, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Then I'm going to try and, then I'll try and start to stylize it more. Maybe make him a little more, whatever, give him a little more personality or something, play with the pose a little more, so on and so forth. Maybe put something back here that's, I don't use something else. I'm probably going to try a couple other different animals if I have different ideas. Main thing is you want to get something stylized and something, I think, fun. Does that make sense? And another thing, you guys, I might go, I got a leg back here, and in my pencils, which is what we're talking about, this could be maybe where I just kind of, this just becomes sort of either a hatched idea, or that could be pure black maybe. Same thing here maybe. This other arm, leg, I might be able to either make it completely black or hatch that out. I start figuring out, like, am I going to do something here to turn this form with my hatching lines? How am I going to handle this main part? Well, they actually, I don't think they have that kind of main, but anyway. Okay, so I would start working out how it's going to work, right? So I want to do a couple things. I'm going to try, like in those legs, I'd probably try up here black and see if that works. Just going to do that with the side of my pencil. Or I'm going to hatch it a little bit. I have a feeling I'm like on this thing, here's what I might do. On this leg idea, I might come in here and go, start off with a nice black, and then out of that, go to a thinner idea, and then let it kind of fade out like that. Does that make sense? So now I'm getting a nice dense black there. And then what I've got to do, and I do the same thing here, but then what I've got to do is I've got to make sure that this is another thing, you guys, I got to make sure that everything comes up to the same level. Okay, so that means I can't have like a dense black all of a sudden that doesn't make sense with the rest of the drawing. It's got to be integrated into the drawing. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So if you're going to do things like this, you got to make sure that they're sort of balanced out with the whole thing. Okay. So I would start to do a little bit of this and just start to figure out where I'm gonna, might do a little here.
Mike, how many pages do we have to do this?
I would do at least 2 pages.
Okay. It could be like a car or animal, plant, something like that, right?
I just said that.
Oh, okay.
Just said it has to be an animal with a background.
Yeah, because sometimes my Wi-Fi's cutting out. That's why. Sorry about that.
It's and I'll put this up on assignment. And by the way, the assignment date that I'm going to put on there is just a placeholder. Okay? Because I have to see where you guys are at, and I got to give you a chance to breathe, and I got to give you a chance to sort of actually be successful with this, which is important to me. And I don't know, you guys might completely knock it out of the park very easily. I think inking takes a little bit, it takes a while. So I want to give you a little bit of breathing room on it. But the first job one, you guys, is you've got to get a design together. If the design is not well drawn and designed and balanced, it will not work. Okay? All ink is going to do is emphasize what a lousy drawing it is. That's all it's going to do. And all color is going to do is emphasize how unfinished that idea was. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by balance? Because I'm still kind of like confused on that concept.
Okay, like if I take this, I mean, this is just a doodle, but, and I flip this way, and I go, okay, it's still holding together. Okay, a lot of times, I don't know if you ever noticed this, you pick up a drawing in your sketchbook or something, you go look at it in a mirror and you go, holy crap, it's just all off. You know what I mean?
Okay,
like maybe something, it might be simple as, could be proportion. It could be that the center of gravity is wrong, where they're like leaning a little just a little bit the wrong way and you miss the center of gravity and they look like they'll fall over. It could just be that like they're gesturing and, you know, this arm is too pulled in, it looks weird. Like it's just all that kind of stuff that you go, and we're talking about cartooning here, okay? So to me, it starts to become very pure design because I'm not doing a formal portrait of anybody. This is my own stuff. So I got to like design this thing, but then it's all got to feel balanced. It's just got to feel balanced. You know what I mean? And designed and finished, like a finished thing. Like I sat down and I finished this. You know what I mean? No, the way I always do it, and I'll show you here in a second. And again, I'm reiterating a few things that are in the video, but I still want to go over them. And then like even this, like I go, well, look at, it's tilted. I do that all the time, by the way. So then I would go, you know, if I was doing an early part of my sketch, oh, there goes my mouse again, hang on. I mean, it's as simple as either I can go, but this I probably just can go like that a little bit. But I do that all the time, by the way. I do that all the time. But that's an easy fix. Now, sometimes early on, when I'm just roughing something out, actually I did it in that video. After I got the pencil to a certain point, because, I mean, it's not that different from a job. I'm doing a demo for you guys in that thing, and I want to get it online as quick as I can, so time's a factor, okay? So the bear thing, when I got them like finished out enough where I go, I think I can transfer this, it's good enough. When I scanned them, because I like to work off a print to light table it, when I scanned him, okay, so anyway, when I drew that, it was a doodle, right? And I just go, oh, I got this and I'll work on this, right? He's turned like 3/4 walking, correct? But oh, you probably haven't seen it, but his face is a little bit off that axis of being 3/4, right? So what I did is when I scanned it, I cut that part of his face out and I just moved it over a little bit, right? And then when I was doing that, I go, oh, he's walking, he's a big bear, right? I'm always thinking about that, you know? He's a big, burly, clumsy bear, right? This arm, when he was walking, was like this. This arm was out. So I tore this arm off in the computer, pivoted it right here, and threw it out. Does that make sense? Like those are just little tweaks. Those are just little tweaks that I go, I don't need to redraw this whole thing, you know? And then I just drew some stuff back in on the Cintiq, and then I printed it out, and that's what I started with. Okay, so I do that stuff all the time. I'll do anything, okay? And I'll show you here in a minute how I do it on paper. It's just all these, you know, I take lots of pieces of trace and I trace back over a head, or I redraw a head, and then I tilt them and I go, oh, it looks way better if he's kind of looking up a little bit or whatever. And you know, and then now I've got 3 or 4 pieces of trace all taped together, throw another piece over it, or I throw it on the scanner, or I throw it on the copy machine, because the copy machine isn't going to read any of those layers, and neither's a scanner. So now it just converts it to one drawing. And then that might be the next starting point where I put some trace over it and start refining again. And sometimes I put 3 or 4 pieces of tracing paper because I don't want to see it perfectly. I want to just, I know there's a landmark in there and I've got my landmarks, but I'm always trying to keep spontaneity in my drawing, right? So if I give myself a little bit of distance visually, I have to kind of find it in there and fix, and it keeps it fresh through the whole process for me, okay? Because the death of this, if you do this, this is what's wrong that people do with this. They'll create basically an outline, and then they'll fill it up with color. And it's like, that's not what we're doing. What we're trying to do here is just like all that stuff we just saw, when you add color to it, or even not add color to it, but especially when you add color to it, all that, and you wouldn't think it would do it, but all that black ink and all that stuff and the color, it all marries together. Okay, so the black ink's doing some of the heavy lifting, and the color comes in and does a little of this, and then the black work is anchoring it, because I put a big dark shadow on the ground, and and they're each doing their job, but if they marry, and you're not noticing so much that, like, you're not noticing the image. You're just seeing a very, punchy, cool image, right? And I always say, you always want, there's line in your work, you want the line and the color to get married. Not where somebody goes, oh, that's an outline thing, and then they fill in with color, which, people draw like that, and that's fine. I don't, there's some people do that, and it's great. I like it where it's what I just described, okay? I think that's a much more sophisticated way to do it. And if you look at everything we just looked at ink-wise over the last, half hour or whatever, that's what all of those were, okay? All of those are just beautiful examples of masters of ink. And I think ink is, I think it's a really tricky medium. You know what I mean? Like, I'd argue that I think watercolor is a hell of a lot easier than ink. Because with watercolor, you don't have to sit around and like totally plan out like this graphic language to make it all work. You know what I mean? Because the ink, I mean, you could just do an ink drawing, and hatch things and stuff. But when you're doing like that heavy black work and all that kind of stuff, that's got to be designed. Like, you got to really think about what you're doing there. And then you're going to find out, if you haven't done this before, just getting the sensitivity of your hand right, where you're like, because a lot of times you're getting that ink in a brush and you're just barely kissing that paper. You know what I mean? Or you're barely kissing the paper and then you just lean on it a little bit to get a fatter line and then pull it back out again. And it's got to be, it wants to look flawless, When you get it flawless, it's amazing. And, and then all the great design and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a really valuable skill to learn, okay? Because again, it's not just about ink. It's about just this idea of design. And it's really a microcosm of design. I think this type of ink work and everything is a microcosm of design. Because you've got to design everything. You've got to have a really finished drawing. You've got to have thought about the design process in your pencils. Then you got to put the pencil together. And then when you transfer it, it's different than when I transfer my drawings. If I'm going to do like a kid's book illustration without ink, that's a different type of drawing I'm going to do. Does that make sense? Like, I want to keep the looseness and all that stuff in my drawing and that, and I don't want to over, I want the pencil to marry the color and all that stuff. Same thing, okay? But again, I think this is a tricky medium. It's very easy to overdo it. It's very easy to make it look stupid and amateurish. It's a tricky thing. And I've always admired the people who just, the guys who are just inkers. The skill set with those people it's nuts, And I think a lot of them aren't even good draftsmen or anything. It's just, they just do that. You know what I mean? I've got some comic books. I'll try and find them. I'll try and find them online. It's not gonna matter if I find them. And they're stupid comic books, but I don't know who inked them. I need to find out who inked them actually and just look that up. It was insane levels of inking in that thing, like this, and just the graphic language they figured out in it, like how to make something, like there's something in one of those, and it's I think it's like a crystal ball or something. And the whole thing, it's making it look shiny. It's all the black ink. It's not the color. You know what I mean? And the way whoever did it handled it, it's just all this really fine, like really out there, like graphic ideas, just beautifully executed. Okay. So you're going to want to do that. You might want to try, I'm not too worried about you guys. I want you to like try a few things. But this time, I'm not as worried about if you're iterating on one idea a little bit. I think you're going to need to iterate on this. But don't go, I'm going to do a gorilla, and that's the only thing you try, right? Now that, by the way, if I'm going to do something like that, the fun part about that is I could maybe do, and you guys, it depends on how, the background, you can ink it, but you've got to figure it out, okay? Or you can just do it straight watercolor if you want. But I want it to be fairly, I don't want to spend all the time on the background. I want to get through this. This is a project, but I mean, it's very much mechanics based right now. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Which means I need you to get the mechanics of this down, okay? And this is the way I'm doing it, okay? Okay, questions? Everybody gets that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so try a couple different, again, I would do something with this donkey. Like, might tilt his head and I'm looking at you skeptically. I don't know. I may make him look a little more broken down. I'd find something, you know what I mean? Or maybe this background relates to everything that's on his back. I just realized I flipped this. Anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah, so then maybe this could make sense by what's on his, his back. I don't know, but I'd probably do something a little more with the pose or whatever. I'm not going to get totally insane about that on this because I just want a good drawing. So a good drawing is not, I'm drawing an animal, whatever it is, and it's just an animal standing there and there's something in the background. That's not interesting. It could be as simple as what I did where he's just kind of walking, he has a bottle of beer. It could be that simple. Okay, I don't care about that. I just don't want, I don't want something just standing there. Okay, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I also want you to push the stylization line. Okay, so part of the reason we've been doing, so this is another part of this I want you to understand. This graphic language thing I've been pushing you guys on, that's not over. Now it goes into this. Okay, because now I want you to start using that idea and start actually creating something that's your own. Okay. And that's what we can use for our exercise. Okay, so remember, you're going from beginning to end. Thumbnails, refinement, transfer to color. Okay. If you want to do gouache, just get a tube of white gouache. Don't get a whole bunch of gouache; it's expensive. Okay, and you won't need it for this. I don't care what watercolors you use. Who cares? What else? Okay, so let's look at a couple things here. And there again, some things I've said, or I think I've said, I don't know. And I know there's some things I'll say in the video that are similar or whatever, but I still want to go over this because I want you guys to talk to me and find out. Whenever I was learning new tools and things like that, I always had questions. Okay. So let's go. And I got a bunch of stuff sitting here, so
Mike, do you think we can take a break anytime soon, just so I can run to the restroom?
Go to the
Or
restroom.
should I just go?
Go.
Okay. All right. Bye. Come
Actually, what time is it? 6:30? You guys want to take 10 minutes?
6:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do 10 minutes.
Okay. I'll make coffee.
So 6:40.
Okay. Thanks.
You played a Mad Magazine board game?
Yeah, my partner's dad had it. He found it at a thrift store, and it was in
Was it the old illustrations from those guys?
Yeah, it's really cool. It was from the what year did you say it was? I feel like you said it was in the 70s.
And it was like those ink drawings?
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah, those dudes are, Mort Drucker and Jack Davis were monsters, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so everybody understands what I just said about all that crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, David, I still want to talk to you about your stuff that we were going to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Shit, man, hang on.
Mike, I know you already kind of talked about mine, but if you find it, I would appreciate it.
Okay. From here on out, I'll have everything. I mean, I had everything kind of organized, but I reorganized it. I think it's going to be a lot better system now. Okay. One thing, you guys, I have a, where am I on here? Is Josh in here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're quiet, man. Why are you so quiet?
In a quiet mood.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually, Mike, do you have time to talk after class?
Sure. What do you need?
I just want to talk some comic stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because we're probably gonna be done early.
Okay, cool.
Because I just want to go over this stuff, and then you guys got to get started. Okay, I have a shorter one of these. I don't know where it is, but it's just some tapenade thing or whatever, and it's short, right? When I'm working with ink in the house, I put it in here. That way, if I spill it, this stuff is brutal, okay? It's waterproof as hell. It's got shellac in it. If you get it on stuff, good luck getting it off, okay? It's a kind of a nightmare, right? So I like I said, I usually have the short one. I don't know where I put it. What's his name? Hirschfeld has a really cool, like, he had a really cool metal thing. Like, it just looked like it was a heavy metal thing, and it just went up like that, and then his ink sat right in a little hole in it, and like, there's no way you could knock it over because it was sitting in like this much metal, and it was in a triangle. I've been trying to find something like that, and I'm thinking about just having somebody make me one. Okay. I'm just going to go over some tools real quick and a little bit of like things that I do to try and get better at this stuff, or, you know, try and keep my skill set up in it. So let's go. The first thing you're going to need, hang on. You guys can see that okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to see, how do I just see my window? That way I can see what you guys are seeing. What's Spotlight videos? Anybody know?
I mean, I think you can pin your own video, so that's like the only screen that you're seeing.
How do I do that?
In the corner of your own like little video square, there's 3 dots, and you should be able to click that.
And then what? Oh, pin video?
Yeah.
And then I can just go in the same place and unpin it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Kara. That's what I need. Okay, yeah, perfect. All right. This, okay, so for this, you could go get a single sheet if you want. I'd probably get a couple. This is Strathmore. This isn't their highest. This is 300. I would not get their highest, but I would get a like a 4-ply or whatever. Okay, so Bristol, it's just paper that's been glued together basically, right, to create like a more board-like surface, okay? And you're gonna want smooth, okay? Don't get, vellum. This is vellum. Sometimes it's called plate is smooth, but this is smooth, okay? It's gonna take ink really well. When you start working with it, one thing you can do, this isn't vellum, or this isn't Bristol, but you can kind of tape it down like that so it doesn't buckle a lot on you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't want it to buckle, and it will buckle. I'm showing you all my cheap brushes because it'll be fine for this. A 2B pencil, but this is okay because as soon as you ink it, you're just going to erase it anyway. You want a kneaded eraser. Okay, you guys have all seen that before, right? Yeah?
Yep. Yeah.
Crow quill, you need a crow quill for sure, okay? And then you're gonna need, and I listed it in there. These are actually just a bunch of nibs I've gotten. These are ones I got, I think at Kinokuniya or someplace. I don't remember where I got them. But this one's a Hunt 513, I think it is. And you're going to need, where did I put it here? Handle. Nib goes in handle, okay? If you got other nibs, try them, okay? This is a good standard drawing nib, okay? You're going to need a round, this is a liner, okay? This is a really nice one to have. but you're going to need a round, like maybe a 1. This is a triple odd, I think. So this is really small. And you're going to want,
Mike,
go ahead.
do you have any advice for getting like caked on ink off of the metal nibs?
I just kind of scrape it off. But the main thing is like as soon as you're using it, just drop it in your water so it's so you're cleaning it off.
Okay.
So I don't. I mean, some of these probably have some ink on them. I don't know. This one doesn't, because I probably just I drop it in the water.
I have some old ones that I was irresponsible with, so they might just be goners.
Yeah, these Croquos are cheap. These handles are cheap, and the nib's pretty cheap. So this stuff's pretty cheap. This is Higgins. You're gonna want an India ink. You've got to get a watercolor or waterproof ink. India ink is waterproof. This is Black Magic, which is super black. Really nice ink. Somebody in here had Speedball. That should be fine. Let's see. I bought these the other day. I'm going to try them right now, actually. Okay, so you guys, I don't know if you know this. The holy grail of inking brushes is a Winsor & Newton Series 7. You guys ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, they're pretty expensive. If you get a number 1, but you don't need to do that. I just bought these.
Mm-hmm.
These are just cheapos, and I bought these. Where'd they go? Okay.
Daiso also has a bunch of them.
Who?
Daiso for like $1.50. They also have really nice felt.
I don't know about the Daiso ones. That sounds iffy to me. I don't know about that.
I mean, I've tried them. The brushes aren't bad.
I know, but have you ever inked with them? Like seriously with them?
I haven't in a long time, but yeah.
And my level, by the way, my expectation of inking is probably not what you guys are thinking. I have a high level of expectation for this. Okay? So I get that all the time with kids, and they go, "Oh, I'm inking." I look at their inks, and I go, "Dude, you don't know how to ink." Okay? I'm not trying to be snotty, but it takes quite a bit of practice to do it right. Okay, so, and I don't think a Daiso brush would do that. They need to hold a really fine point. And if they don't do that, it's a thing where, look, right now it's not going to matter that much, and I can make it work with these. But if I was going to sit down and do a job, I'd go grab a Series 7, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
These are artist lofts, so that means I must have got them at Michael's. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I did that deliberately because I want to see how they work. Because actually, I think some of this other artist loft stuff isn't bad. Okay, I think it's pretty good for the money. Okay, so you're gonna need water, right? You're gonna need paper towels, and then what I'm gonna want you to start doing, and you can do this like on any kind of paper. Oh, another thing, you guys, this is just what I like to do. Hang on. I don't like getting ink all over my hands. Or paint. So I buy a box of these things at Harbor Freight. Actually, Elan gave me some really good ones. You gotta keep your scraps, okay? I had some in here, hang on. I have a scrap sheet somewhere, but I'll use a new one. So it's probably hard to see, but that's a really clean, smooth surface. Can you guys see that a little bit? There's no tooth on it, okay? Which I really like anyway. But the main thing I think you should start kind of getting used to, I also leave the lid in there like that so it doesn't spritz on anything, is start to get in here with your brush and see my hand's not warmed up yet. And you want to start getting used to, that's getting a little bit better. You want to get used to a couple things. You want to get used to how your, see, like, look, I've got to drop that. Let me try this other brush for a second. So this is my, let's look at a couple things here. This is a rigger. Okay, so you can see it's got a really long, or a liner. Sometimes they call it a liner. And this one will make a really nice tapered line. A little thicker. But once I get some of that ink off there, I can get really thin with it like that. There you go. And I can lean on it. You can see right there, just leaned on it a little bit. And pull it off. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then like this one here, this is a triple lot. So really fine brush. So you also want to get used to like, keep this, you can see what a nice brush that is, right? And this is a cheapo, by the way. Now the difference between this, look at that. That's nice. What you want to start doing, and you want to start doing it like this way. It takes my hands quite a while to get warmed up. You want to start doing, like, see, also, you guys, I don't know if you can see that. There's a little bead of ink on it. I always get rid of that if I have it on my paper towel or whatever, because that could just drop onto your drawing and then you're screwed. So you're going to want to do some curved ones. And we're always kind of going, we always want to go thin to thick. You want to start doing that kind of thing. And then you can try and match it. Now my hands are getting warmed up a little bit. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the same thing then, I'm going to want to get these nice and clean. It takes me a while to get those.
So Mike, I feel like this is a dumb question, but are we primarily going to be using like the physical like paint brushes for this, or is the crow quill, like the pen quill, also used for this?
Both. We're going to use everything.
Okay.
So what's going to happen here is like sometimes I tend to just start using the brush, you know, but like, you know, there's a lot of just basic drawing stuff, which is what I love this pen for, this nib, because I can do the same thing. See how fat it got there. I can do the same thing here. I can lean on it a little bit and get really nice hatched lines with it.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, if I'm going to do a bunch of hatching, I might come in with this, like the stuff that's describing form, you know, and then if I'm going to come back in here and go, you know, create like a core or something, you know, I'm probably going to use this. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Drawing, I'm probably going to use that. Sometimes I used to always go in with a nib first and kind of do the drawing, then I sort of build it up. And then for the really fine stuff like we were just talking about with the, you know, if I have a tree back here, you can see how thin that is, right? This crow quill, right? It's like needle thin. So if I was going to do something in the back where I was going to just do a tree silhouette like we were talking about, this is probably what I'd pull out. Right tool for the right job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's always my thing, you know, right tool for the right job. You know, and then I could come in here and just do what we were talking about and just go and start to pull my you know, my lines with that. And then if I had my foreground element here, that's going to sit way back there. And also, look, you can also tell my hands aren't warmed up because this line right there I hit, I leaned on it a little harder than the other ones. I don't want to do that, okay? If I'm doing something in the background like that, or just in general, I want to keep this I want to keep my lines like fairly consistent. Okay, this one, what somebody just talked about, having dried ink on it, I think this one does. Yeah, it does. That's weird. Might have to go get a new one. This one's old. I think actually the splines are messed up on this one. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but when you push down on it, they split. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that spline, I'm not sure if that's what's happening here. This might just be, this pin's old. There it goes. It's scratchy. It shouldn't be that scratchy. This is probably at least 10, 11 years old, so that's probably why. Yeah, it's just not working right. That might be the splines got messed up, okay? That'll happen with fountain pens too, okay? Now, as far as practice with this stuff, I like to keep, because you're not always going to pull out the bottle of ink and all that crap. I like to keep a dedicated sketchbook just for brush pen stuff. So I use this one, which is Strathmore, I think. Okay, I love this for this. Okay, and then I use a. You could use anything. You could use a Sakura brush pen. You could use a Prismacolor brush pen, whatever you want. I like these the Pentel ones. They're not waterproof, so just know that. But the good thing about the Pentel pen is it's kind of fussy. Like you can see how needle sharp that is, and this will stay like this for a long time. So like what Emily was saying about the Daiso brushes, the thing about that using cheap brushes with this is they're going to fray a lot faster, and they can't fray. They've got to keep a needle point sharp needle. Does that make sense? Or tip? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why if you look at this one, that's a look at you can see the tip right there, how it's got that little point on it. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
This brush is over 20 years old, and it's still doing that because it's a really good brush, okay? And I can take this, I think I did use it in the video a little bit. I did use it in the video. And I can get really fine lines, but it holds a ton of pigment. So I can, I can put a lot of pigment on it and get really fine lines and stuff. I used it, I think, in the video for the gouache, right? And a lot of those things look like, the lines look like it'd be something I used a thinner brush with, but I used this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is a really good brush. Okay, if you get any of your brushes, but especially your good brushes, make sure you're taking care of them. So if you're going to wash, as soon as you get done with these, you wash them. If you're using acrylic, you got to keep them wet because acrylic will ruin them. Put the soap in your hand. Don't use detergent or anything like that. Just think of your own hair and go, I wouldn't use detergent on my hair. This is natural hair, this one. And then rub it into your palm and then rinse it all out, get it all rinsed out nice. And I mean, I've had this 20 years. This brush still goes right back to a point. Okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I do, and this is just what I do, I take, let me see if I have one. Yeah, this will work. I usually use a color erase, okay, and I keep that and I usually use like an orange color erase. This is a red one. And what I like to do I like doing it on the tone paper, is I'll design my drawing, whatever that is, right? And I don't use a Prisma, I use a color erase. And I usually use an orange. You can use a red though, or whatever. I mean, you could use anything, and I'll design my drawing, like really kind of design it a little more than I normally do. And then I come in with this and I just ink it. And I try to come up with all kinds of cool little, and I have to get my hand used to this pen because it's really kind of fussy, and then as I come under here, I'll lean on it a little more. And I'll just try and start to get some really nice, if there's hair here, I'm going to design it, from a brush pen perspective. And I get really fussy with it and do like, pretty finished out stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, they don't have to be these because these Pentels are expensive. Okay, I think they're about $18. the Prisma, and the only difference is the Prismas, the Sakuras. The Prismas I think are actually really nice. They're going to fray a lot faster. This thing will hold this point for a long time, and the cheaper ones fray, but they're also cheaper, and you can throw them away and it's fine. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then I usually go in here and I might throw, like I can't throw watercolor on it as much because I don't think these are waterproof. I think the Prismas are and the Sakuras are. But I'll come in here and hit it with some highlights, you know, some Prisma color, white Prisma color and that kind of thing. What else? There was something else I was going to show you guys. If you've got brushes, like nylon brushes or whatever, just try those first. Okay? Don't go out and buy a bunch of brushes, and don't go out and buy a bunch of expensive brushes, because you kind of need to learn what you're doing, and then you can get into this, right? Also, you might, if whatever brushes you're using, I mean, you don't have to do this, but it's not a bad idea to take the brushes you use for your inking and just use those for inking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, ink will beat them up. Ink's got shellac in it, so like, don't go dip your brush into ink and then you're using your brush and then you go, okay, I'll throw that over here. And now I'm going to use my nib, because this thing, it's going to dry up with that shellac in it and it's done. Okay. It's shellac. It's just, that's what makes it waterproof. Okay. Questions?
No.
Also, what you want to get used to doing.
Question.
Yeah.
Everything that you're going over right now is on the video, correct?
It will be. Oh, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because the quality of this on my computer is I can barely see it. So I just want to make sure I can see this all in the video at least.
That's weird because I can see it fine.
I don't know. Is anybody else, is it hazy on anyone else's screen or not?
Yeah.
Very.
It's kind of hazy on mine. Like I can see like the larger strokes he's done, but like the teeny stuff, like it's kind of like grainy almost.
Yeah, exactly. Grainy.
How about there? Wait.
I think it might just be the streaming quality, and then when you like post the video, I think it'll be like clean.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. All right. Yes. But also, I mean, the 2-hour video has all this stuff in it. Then what I'm doing here is I just want to show you a few things, what I just showed you with all this stuff, that I want you to start trying this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get you guys to do with this, what we're talking about right now, is before, oh yeah, okay, now I look super grainy. So I get it, yeah. Is before we're gonna start actually inking, I want you guys to start getting used to using a brush, using a nib, and start to do that thin, thick thing, and do a lot of rat tails, which is that one where I'm just kind of going a little heavier and then I fade it off. So it goes fat to really thin. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then really get used to, this is another thing with your brush especially. Get used to kind of being able to just sort of get a super fine line with that brush, which is where you have to get really barely hitting that paper. You know what I mean? And then pulling off, and because you can get his lines almost as fine as that crow quill pen with your brush, but there's something, I'm sick of looking at myself now. Hang on. There's something, take these off. There. There's something very expressive about a brush. Hopefully you're gonna lock into that. Like when I do like kind of kids booky watercolor illustration-y kind of stuff, when I go in, if at the end of that, sometimes I go in, I hit it with a little bit of brown ink or whatever. I always do it with a crow quill pen. And I've tried to do it with like a sepia whatever pit pen or what. It just does not get the same kind of line. It's just not the same thing at all. Okay. And I'm not saying all those tools aren't great, because they are for different things. But I think you're going to start seeing, if you can get pretty good at a brush and nib, you're going to see how expressive that line is. And it's a huge difference. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge difference. And the other thing, you guys, now so you guys might completely shock me and just go, yeah, I got it. And show me, you know, here's all the strokes I'm doing. They're great. I'm going to go, okay, cool. I think it usually has a pretty good learning curve on it. So what you need to do is just go, it's really, get a sheet of paper. It doesn't have to be your Bristol either. I mean, you just get some smooth paper and just start practicing those strokes, thin to thick, curved thin to thick, rat tails, thick to very thin. And then let it get used to taking your brush with a little bit of ink on it and then dabbing it on a paper towel and having a spare piece of paper and dragging it until you get nice dry brush techniques with it, okay? That way you're getting familiar with all this that we're going to do before we get to the action. Because I don't want you to start pick up a brush when we start doing the illustration the first time, especially if you've never done it before or you haven't done a lot of it, okay? I want you to have a little bit of understanding under your hands about it, okay? Also, you could do the same thing I just did. You don't have to do it of people. I usually tend to do that cafe sketching, that brush pen stuff. Do some, whatever, some character looking stuff or something like that, and take your ink brush and, ink stuff and start to just kind of play around with it and make all your mistakes there, okay? And start getting familiar with it there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
I want to give you guys a nice runway to hit it, okay? I think, I've already said this, but I think that, there's a learning curve on it, and I want to give you guys enough time to actually learn it, okay? And actually kind of get a handle on it before we move on to something else, okay? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Questions?
Yeah.
No questions?
So all the inking will be manually, right?
How would it not be manually?
Do you mean like?
Because I heard that
The what?
I thought I was gonna do it digitally with inking and digitally,
How are you gonna use India ink digitally?
like ZBrush. I don't know.
Comics Max Pack.
Huh?
The Comics Max Pack on Procreate.
No, look. Somewhere down the line in this class, I'll start to talk about digital and things like that, okay? Because I think you can't not talk about it in 2020. But I also have a problem when I'm seeing a lot of stuff that, here's the thing. There's a lot of stuff digitally that people are going and they're emulating somebody. It's changed a lot, okay? So they're doing digital paintings, and I look at the paintings and I go, you don't know how to paint. Like, you're emulating that digital painter who came from traditional and understands brushwork and understands color and understands lighting and understands all those things because they're well trained or whatever. And you're emulating this thing in the computer, and now you're using all these tricks in the computer to try to get it to look like that. And it's like, guess what? It doesn't look like that. And the same thing with ink. Like, you're going to go, oh, I'm going to go in and ink this thing in the computer or whatever. It's like, you don't really understand anything about it, though. Like, you don't understand how to design your blacks. You don't understand how to design to come out of your blacks. You don't understand any of these techniques to do that. And you see that stuff, and it's usually pretty bad, okay? Inking is one of the #1 things that I see with people that they fall apart on. And I think part of it's because A, they haven't been taught it, and B, they don't practice it enough. Like, you got to
That's
practice.
the main reason why I want to take this class. Like, I want to really get that line variant, like that, like thick thinness. And like, I feel like with digital, sometimes you get it, but it's not the same.
It's because there's not the underlying knowledge behind it. I think that's just true of anything, okay? It's just like, I don't know anything about basketball, and I don't know anything about Kobe Bryant, but I remember listening to him, I don't know, an interview or something one time, and he apparently just had a voracious appetite for practice. Like, he knew he had to practice harder than anybody to be better than everybody. And he kept talking about fundamentals. He's like, I'm into the fundamentals of the game, fundamentals of the game, fundamentals of the game. And I never even thought about that because I don't know anything about that sport, or any sport for that matter. But it made me appreciate him. I was like, wow, he's really into this game. Like, he loves this, And he kept talking about that. And then after he died, there was, because I think he was the captain of the team or whatever, and some young newbie, and he wasn't that, he didn't hang out with the other players that much or anything. Wasn't an asshole or anything. It just wasn't what he did. Anyway, so some young player wanted to impress him. He goes, I'm going to get to the practice like 2 hours early. Gets to practice, Kobe's already there, and he's already been there for like an hour. You know what I mean? He worked hard. You know what I mean? So if you want to get these kind of things down, any of this art stuff, it's not just this. You got to work hard and take out your paper, take out your paper and do what I just did. Like my hands are not warmed up at all. I need to sit there and really, I don't start drawing until my hand, you know, or inking until my hands feel like they're somewhat warmed up. Okay, because I'm going to screw it up if I don't. And a lot of it is that first initial thing of being able to get that brush to do a really fine line, which really is it's just the control of barely kissing that paper and keeping it. You got to remember, you got to keep it right at the same surface contact for the whole length of the line if you want to just do one clean line, right? Because as soon as you vary it, it either gets thicker or it gets thinner if you pull up or down. So you got to keep it really, so what you want to do is just do kind of what I was doing there, do some really clean, thin lines, do some thin to thick lines, do a lot of rat tails, fat to thin, and then some of your curved thin to thick lines, and maybe some bigger, broader curved thin to thick lines, kind of like the these right here. Hang on. Kind of like these bigger ones right here, you know? So you're kind of fulcruming your arm and getting a nice clean line, okay? And then another thing is when we do start to ink, oh shit, I just lost my train of thought. Crap, it was important. I lost my train of thought. Senior moment. It'll pop in my head in a minute. Also, put not paper towels, newspaper down, but it's going to soak through the newspaper. So try and do this someplace, you know, and be careful. Okay. That's why I keep it in that little tub. So if it tips over, it just floods a tub, right? Because if you get this on your table or whatever, somebody's going to kill you. Okay. Because it's probably not going to come up. What else? Just get Higgins ink. That's what I would suggest. You can get Higgins ink almost anywhere. Get black. Don't get a different color. I tend to, with other things, I usually tend to use a brown ink because it's just not quite as harsh as black. But for this, we want to do black, okay? I mean, you can see the power of that dense, rich black, right? Hang on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know what that is. Okay, whatever that is. Okay. Okay. What else? God, there's something I just want to tell you guys, and I totally forgot it. I'm only going to assign one page of thumbnails for this. I'm guessing because basically what I want is I want your idea. I want you to kind of work it out. And then if you feel like you are working it out and you want to go bigger and start to refine a little bit, go. Okay? Because I do want to get you guys to the inking as quick as I can. But I don't want to also just throw you to the wolves either. I really want to walk you through it a little bit. Okay?
Sounds good.
I'm not a fan of showing you this and then going, okay, next week the project's due. You're not going to learn anything that way, I don't think. You're going to rush through it too fast. You're not going to have time to go back and forth with me a little bit on it. And again, this isn't just inking, you guys. It's the design that's so important with this, okay? The reason I'm assigning an animal to this is that I want you to have to make some organic shapes, which is fur, basically, okay? And I want it anthropomorphized and stylized, right? I want it, I want a cartoony thing, and I want enough level of finish on it that it's worth inking. Does that make sense? I don't just want some outliney thing. That doesn't work, okay? That's a coloring book.
Are we allowed to do like more humanoid versions of animals or just full on animal?
Like what?
Like I was thinking like, like Peter Rabbit, like animals wearing clothes.
No,
yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I want them anthropomorphized.
Okay. But I was like, do we want it more animal or can we go like Zootopia, Tom and Jerry?
You could go Zootopia. I just don't want it to be that sort of flat fill color. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense then. All right, thank you.
But also, I don't want a derivative of Zootopia either.
No. Yeah. No. I don't want to make anyone else's work.
Okay, that's a wannabe Disney character. I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't want a wannabe anime character. I don't want a wannabe Disney character. I don't want to wannabe.
You're telling me I can't make a furry? Oh, darn. No.
And the reason is, it's like, I don't care. I like some of that stuff. I'm not saying I don't. what I'm trying to do is make sure that you guys are starting to become your own artists. Okay? That you're bringing something to the table that somebody will want to hire you for. Okay?
Yeah, I just wanted to know how far to go.
Yeah, right, go for it. Like, you can go pretty far. Okay? I'm not going to pull back the reins on you. All I'm going to do is, if it satisfies a requirement, animal in the foreground, something simple in the background. And the reason I'm doing the simple in the background is I want you to use, because you can use ink in the background. I just chose not to. Then you got to learn how to do that, where it's not just, you know, heavy ink everywhere and now nothing's separating atmospherically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also going to be a lot of which tool for which job. Like, you guys might go, man, I use the nib for the whole thing in this almost. And you'll go, I like doing that. That's totally fine. Okay. The only thing I'd say is, like, probably if you're going to put a big area of black, then you'll probably use your brush to do that. But you might go, I don't like me doing my line work with a brush. I like doing it all with a nib. And guess what? I found this nib. You ever seen this nib? No. Well, it's better than the one you use, you know. Or you might, you know, one of these, I got a bunch of Japanese nibs. I haven't even used them yet. They might be fantastic. I don't know. I haven't used them yet. You know, so, you know, all those things are going to vary. So the main thing that we have to have is a good standard drawing nib. That's the 513 for me. A crow quill, and a good inking brush. Probably not over a 1. And the other thing you got to look for in that brush is that it has a nice sharp point. And as soon as that sharp point goes away, that brush is done. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's it. It has to keep that nice needle point. Otherwise, it just doesn't work at all. Okay. That's part of the reason everybody loves the Series 7s is they always spring back to that beautiful point. They hold a lot of liquid. They're natural hair. They're Kolinsky sable, I think. And I think a number 1 is probably around 18 to 20 bucks. But I wouldn't go do that. Just get a nylon round, you know, and look at the top and make sure that it's not frayed and all screwed up, right? And then it comes to a nice sharp point. And that's it, you know. And then you're going to go, if you keep doing this and you want to really get into it, then go invest in probably a Series 7 and then at least try it, because you'll probably go, holy crap, because it's going to make everything a little easier. Okay. Good quality materials make things a little easier. Right? Yeah.
See.
I can't hear you. Okay. Any other questions?
Are we good or no?
Nope, no questions. And you're gonna re-upload all the information online, right, for Canvas? So in case anything is missed, we're good.
From here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always put up the Zoom meetings.
Okay. I meant like also like the specifications for what we're doing, but sounds like we're good.
I'll put that under assignments.
Okay, perfect.
The only thing I want you guys to do is don't pay attention to the due date, because I've got a lot of people in here. I've got like 25 people in here, something like that. I've got to read the room in this. Okay. So it's like anything else. Some of you guys are going to get it pretty simple or, you know, kind of get a handle on it. Some of you might already be good at it. I don't know. But I'm guessing that there's going to be we're going to need some back and forth here. And I like to let the class breathe a little bit. I don't want to just throw this at you and then go finish it. And I just don't think that's useful. So what I'll do is I might go change the date and go, hey, I'm going to make this due on Thursday because you guys are killing it and you guys are going to be done on Thursday. Or I'll go, yeah, I might push it out a couple more days and give you a couple more days on it. Because we're covering, you guys, it's not just inking. After the inking, then we got to go into the color, right? It's a big job, you know, especially you haven't done all that stuff traditionally and all that kind of thing. You know, it's a lot of stuff to learn in one fell swoop. Okay.
Right.
The watercolor, I feel like is, I actually think the watercolor is a lot easier than the inking, but,
are you going to be able to teach us how to use water inks, like colored inks? Because I have a bunch that I haven't used, the Winsor Newton ones.
I don't want to use colored inks.
No. What if we want to?
There's not, huh? No.
What if we want to play with it?
You're always trying to change the rules for no reason.
Listen, I have them and they need to be used.
Well, go use them in somebody else's class.
Okay, but they're all digital classes, so I can't.
Mike?
I want you to use watercolor, and then play. But by the way, those later in this class you could use.
Okay.
All right. I don't care later on, because later on I'm going to give you guys way more freedom and go, well, what do you want? How you want to do this? Okay. So that'll all change. Okay. Also, stylistically, we'll start to explore more things and style. I'm really more interested in helping you guys get a little closer to figuring out what you want to do and what, stylistically what you want to do and all that kind of stuff. But that stuff really comes out of repetition. Repetition. You know what I mean? Getting in the sketchbook, doing this, designing, making stuff all the time, and all of a sudden you start noticing, like, oh, I've got a style. It falls out of the sky in your lap. You don't find it; it finds you. But you got to do a lot of work to find it. Okay, that's just how it works. Okay. Anybody who's putting on a workshop or an online thing is like finding your style. That's a bunch of crap. It'll find you, and it finds you if you're doing a lot of work. Okay. And guess what? It's going to, like anybody else, going to be an amalgamation of things that influence you, and then you kind of twist it into your own thing. That's what all of us are, basically, right? Other questions?
Mike, it's me, David.
Yeah.
Earlier you said we were going to go over some things, so I'm just reminding you.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm a little early, so I'm all right. Okay, if you guys don't have any other questions, I'm going to let you go because you need to get working, okay? I want this nailed down next week, by the way. I don't want to go like, oh, I only got to one thumbnail. Then I don't want to see it. I want to see this worked out, okay? Because you've got to work this out before we get to the meaty stuff. And the meaty stuff's when we get to actually start this. Because next week, I got to help you structure that up and make sure that it's, I got to go through structure with you, okay? Like, how do we structure this? How are we going to solve these design problems? How are we going to solve these ink design problems, and so on and so forth? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sense.
I'm not going to ever just give you anything and not sit down with you and go over it with you, okay? I have to do that on everything. Otherwise, again, it's just not going to work, okay? So I want you to do is start practicing ink strokes and all that kind of stuff, and start playing around with your tools a little bit, okay? And start getting familiar with them. You don't have to use all your good, like I have this, my hammer mill paper, which is a copy paper that's super smooth. It'll probably feather a little bit, like the ink will probably feather a little bit on it, but I could still practice on it. You know what I mean? I don't want you to burn through all your Bristol, right off the bat. You might want to do one, your first one, play around on Bristol, and then look at the difference when you go on to like another paper, and it might do what they call feathering, which is basically it just bleeds a little. It might not either. Okay, I've never tried regular ink on hammer mill. Higgins ink. So who knows? It might work great. I don't know. It seems like it would because it's so smooth.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
When you post in the assignments for what you want us to do, and I know you said it's not going to be specifically that day and whatnot, can you also describe a little bit of what it is you want? Because I can hear parts of what you're saying, but the other half, the video pauses and like completely cuts out because of my internet, and then I keep logging back in and missing a good majority of what you're saying.
Right now, you mean?
It's been happening for the past 2 hours. Like I get a decent portion of what you say, and then the video freezes, and then my internet cuts, and then I gotta log back in. So I don't know exactly what you want for the assignment.
This whole thing will be up on the internet by tomorrow, probably.
Okay.
This whole meeting.
All right.
Every
All right, sounds good.
The only time I won't post a meeting is if I go, I don't know, if I just didn't say anything that really warrants having to go back and listen to it. You know what I mean? Like if we just had some discussion around whatever, and I didn't talk about anything or show any technique or any of that kind of stuff, then that's the only time. That's pretty much never. Like I'm always talking about technique or going over stuff. So they'll always be up. Okay. The only thing is just give me, the only problem with it on days like this, I'll probably have to do it tomorrow. And then it takes about, depending on how long the meeting is, like that video that I just put up of this tutorial, that took pretty much all day because I had to finish it, editing it. And then I had to render it out of Premiere, and that took 3.5 hours. and then loading it up to YouTube. I woke up I wake up at weird hours. I think I woke up at like 3:30 or 4:30 this morning, and I looked at it, and that's when I posted it. Because it finished uploading, who knows, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to have that up a couple days ago so you guys had seen it. And I think if you go through the, and just watch it in bite-sized chunks. I get it. It's long. It's 2.5 hours long. And I also put title cards in it for a reason. So there'll be a title card that'll say tools. There'll be a title card that says rough drawing or whatever it says. And and their color, right? The reason I do that is when you're scrubbing through, if you see a title card, you go, oh, that's a new sequence. Does that make sense? So then when you go through, you go, oh, that big purple card, that means he's talking about something new now. And you look at it and you go, oh, now he's talking about color. Okay, that's what I want to see. You need to go through the whole thing, obviously. But that way I do that so it's a little harder. It's a little easier to find the sections on YouTube. Because
I'll try and get to that tomorrow.
Yeah, you can just scrub through it and see, the title cards or whatever.
For sure.
That's why I do that. Sometimes I'll even leave them just a little bit longer so you'll catch them as you're scrubbing through. I actually think about this stuff. Anyway, and I think it's fairly clear. I was looking at it again. I can only take so much of watching and listening to myself. I can't stand it.
Fair enough.
The good thing about Zoom is that you have to see yourself all the time and hear yourself all the time. So you sort of get over yourself. You know what I mean? You just finally just go, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't bother me as much now because I have to hear myself so much and see myself so much. It used to be I'd see myself on video, I'd be horrified. And I'm still horrified, just a little less horrified.
Honestly, I feel like our generation at this point is just like okay with it, with like
probably.
TikTok and Instagram. We're just like, oh, it's us. Hello.
That's probably a good thing, to not be all weird about your, whatever it is. Because you think your voice sounds so weird, but it doesn't sound weird to anybody else because they've always heard you, so it doesn't sound weird to anybody else. Okay. I think I'm done. Everybody's got it. Everybody knows what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So one page of the thumbnails, right?
Yeah, I'm just expecting 111 by 17 page. I wouldn't mind if you did more. And if you want to start refining your drawing, that would actually be good for next week because then I can get quicker to helping you get it to a finish.
Now, when we're doing these little thumbnail sketches, can we just use like I have like smooth, like cheap paper?
I don't care what paper you use.
You don't care? Okay, cool. That's all.
By the way, the thumbnails, they could be in pencil, they can be in pen, they could be, I don't care.
Okay, that was my next question. I was like, can I just do like a 10B Mitsubishi and just hash stuff out? But okay.
Absolutely. I don't care what tool you use for this. I don't care. Right? Yeah.
Can I stay after for a second to ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
All right, you guys, I'm going to let you all go. Whoever, there's a couple of you have questions, you hang out, and I'll talk to you guys, okay? And I'll put everything.